Hey everyone, welcome to your second lecture for our 249 Professional Practices 1. Apologies for the technical difficulties with your first lecture. Hopefully it's resolved now. If anyone else has any continuing issues with it, please let me know. You can either email me or send me a message in the announcements panel. So I'd like to continue moving on with a lecture from chapter 1 of Practices of Looking by Marita Sturken and Lisa Cartwright. In particular, I'd like to delve into the myth of the photographic truth, what that means in terms of how we perceive images as a language, but also how we perceive images as art. So, photography plays a particular role in visual culture. Throughout its history, photographs and photography have been associated with realism, even though the creation of an image through a camera lens has always involved some degree of subjective choice about such things as the selection of the subject, framing, and lighting, for example. Some types of image recording seem to take place without human intervention, as we have seen in the examples, of dashboard cameras, CCTV surveillance, and even drone videos. All of these are automatically recorded images with very little aesthetic decision making or choices, and more about capturing information. Photography has long been bound up with the ideas about objective seeing, or seeing like a machine, and about impartial, unbiased, and factual representational strategies. The camera is a machine, and many people associate machines with objective and non-human vision. I thought this was kind of funny. All cameras and camera-generated images, be they still photographs or video, electronic or digital, bear the cultural legacy of still photography, which historically has been regarded as a more objective, mechanical, or machine-based practice than, say, in comparison to things like painting or drawing or printmaking, which are linked to the more subjective work of the hand. Photography is something that is traditional, and it's a form, much like any other art form, but it was developed in Europe around 1839, where the philosophical idea of positivism held sway. Positivism is a philosophical theory that holds verifiable scientific knowledge about natural phenomena to be the authentic source of truth about the world. In a positivist outlook, machines are regarded as more reliable than the unaided human sensory perception or the hand of the artist. Since the mid-19th century, there have been many arguments for and against the idea that photographs are objective renderings of the real world, providing unbiased truth. For example, when a photograph is introduced as documentary evidence in a courtroom, it is often presented as if it were incontrovertible proof that an event took place in a particular way. And so, comparing this slide with the previous slide, this image is by Rodolphe A. Rice, and it's a demonstration of the Bertillon metric photography system. This image was made in 1925, and Rice is showing how it's used to document, or how it would be used to document the body of someone who had been murdered. And then here we are a few years earlier, 1914, a photograph by Alphonse Bertillon, the murder of Monsieur Canon in the Boulevard de Clichy on the 9th of December, 1914. So you can see exactly the same angle at which was shown in the previous slide, directly above the victim, the deceased. One thing you may also notice is that around the image you can see these ruler marks, which are in the metric system because it was in Paris, as well as other metric measurements. So this could be used in a court of law against someone who had committed a crime. So you can see also, and more importantly, how in the 19th century in particular, in the early 20th century, the idea of photography as a form of truth was seen by most people as a fact, and undeniable fact in many cases. We all kind of look at a photograph like this, perhaps, or the photograph before, as being contradictory. One is a demonstration, and the other is the example of what that demonstration can prove. And I use the term prove lightly, because at the same time, the truth value of photography has been the focus of skepticism and debate, not only in courtrooms, but also in other contexts, as images can be differently interpreted and may reasonably support different and even contradictory truths, as these two slides show. That's why the idea of photographic truth is considered by many, including myself, as a myth. So a good example of this, and one of the main debates about photographic realism during the early digital era, concerned the question of manipulated images with programs like Photoshop. Photoshop, for all of you who didn't know, was released in 1990, about the time just before I became an undergraduate student. And what it did was allow the everyday consumer to alter images easily, making it possible for most photographers or users to fabricate a reality through image manipulation. Yet, this is not just a digital issue. Analog photographs have always been the subject of alteration and trickery from the 19th century through the 20th century and now into the 21st century. From the very early days of photography, they've been altered to manipulate both truth and history. The image that you're looking at right now is a widely cited example of this early faking of photographic truth, and it was used in the case of an alleged documentation of a slain Civil War rebel sharpshooter published in Alexander Gardner's 1865 photographic sketchbook of the war. This photograph was actually attributed to Gardner's photography assistant, Timothy O'Sullivan. The Civil War was one of the first wars to be documented by the photographic camera. Certainly wouldn't be the last. The Civil War also was an opportunity for Gardner to present his photograph and photography as scenes that he encountered. It was later suspected that in fact the gun at the sharpshooter's side was Gardner's own, which he apparently placed there for dramatic effect after dragging the soldier's corpse into the setting that he labeled the Devil's Den. So this by far is the most infamous of 19th century photographs, when people began to really dig into it, and photo historians, art historians, as well as historians in the 1990s really started to take this photograph apart. And the very first clue that this is not actually the deathbed of a rebel sharpshooter is the fact that this weapon here is actually a musket, and muskets are not used for sniper activities or sharpshooting activities. The second fact is that this slain soldier was actually found in other photographs by Gardner and O'Sullivan in different locations, meaning they used his corpse to tell a story that may or may not have actually been truthful, and as such became more of a fiction. So fast forward to 2014 with this piece. Above you have an image of two palm trees and some rocks and a far off landscape and beautiful water and beaches and sand, and beneath that you have all of that plus an individual, and the title of this piece is called "Nothing Beats Really being on this beach, by the artist Zilla van der Born, who created a series in 2014 called Oh God, Zilla, which of course is a play on the Japanese monster from the 1950s. That digital images can be manipulated with great ease like this confounds the association of photography with the documentation of truth. And you all are certainly as skeptical as I am at this point in history when we look at a photograph. The proliferation of proven false images in the news media and more recently on social media has produced a much more skeptical viewing public. In 2014, Dutch graphic designer Zilla van den Born explored this tension between the truth value of the image and its capacity for manipulation when, as a school project in art school, she spent 5 weeks on a vacation, and I say vacation in quotes, in Asia, during which she was in fact at home using Photoshop to create and post vacation photos, inserting herself into typical tourist scenes, group shots, and beach scenes in photographs she shared on her social media. Skyping with fake backgrounds and sending fake postcards, Van den Born created a photographic portfolio of her travel adventures without ever leaving her apartment. After the trip was over, Van den Born let her family and friends in on the secret, titling her project Oh God, Zilla. And she states, "My goal was to prove how common and easy it is to distort reality. I did this to show people that we filter and manipulate what we show on social media." So in this, it's a paradox that photography, although we know that images can be ambiguous and are easily altered, as Van den Born's were, much of photography's power still lies in the shared belief that photographs are, or should be, truthful records of events. The increasing prevalence of documenting the documenter, which we saw in the previous lecture with the photograph of Ouija's car trunk open and the typewriter, shows that and reaffirms that photography's provenance and truth claims are not far off. The last slide I want to show you in today's lecture, and I apologize for this background, I gotta turn these all off, there we go, is a photograph by the Swiss photographer Robert Frank and artist. This photograph is called Trolley, New Orleans, 1955, and it's a gelatin silver print. And our awareness of the subjective nature of imaging is in constant tension with the legacy of objectivity that clings to cameras and software that together produce images and data about us and our world. The French theorist Roland Barthes used the term studium, studium, to describe this truth function of the photograph. Yet, as we all know, if you've taken a photography class with me or Lynn, photographs are also objects with both subjective and emotional value as well as meaning. They can channel feelings and affect in ways that often seem magical, or at least highly personal and interiorized. Barthes coined the term punctum as well, which is a Greek word for trauma or puncture, to characterize the effective elements of those photographs that pierce one's heart with feeling. Photography is thus paradoxical. The same photograph can be an emotional object, conveying its sharp and immediate punctum, yet it can also serve as a measured documentary evidence of facts, through the more distant studium by which the image invites us to regard what it shows. And this would be a perfect example of a photograph that acts on both levels according to Barth's theory in terms of a practice of looking, which is both a studium and a punctum. So this photograph from 1955 of passengers on a segregated trolley car reflects that paradoxical relationship. Again, it was taken by Robert Frank in New Orleans while traveling around the United States between 1955 and 1957. He was funded by 2 Guggenheim Fellowships awarded to him to document American life. 83 photographs selected from 687 rolls of film, or in today's terms, more than 20,000 photographs. So 83 were published in The Americans, which was a photographic essay with an introduction by the beat poet Jack Kerouac. In this photograph, Trolley, New Orleans, we see individual passengers. A white man and a white woman are seated near the front. A white boy and girl occupy the middle seat, and a black man and a black woman and black women sit further back in the trolley car. As factual evidence of the past, the image records a particular moment in the racially segregated American South of the 1950s, when blacks were required by law to sit in the rear of public transportation, leaving the front seats for white passengers. Yet, at the same time, this photograph does more than document these particular facts or that studium. For some viewers, this image is moving insofar as it captures a fleeting moment in culture on the precipice of momentous change, evoking powerful emotions about America's racial divide. The picture was taken just as laws, policies, and social mores concerning segregation began to undergo radical change in response to civil rights activism, hence the punctum. So, that is the end of the lecture for today, going over the idea of myth and photographic truth, or the fact that photographic truth is a myth. Thursday, I'm going to talk a little bit further about myth, connotation, and the meaning of images as we continue through chapter 1 of this book. Don't forget to do your reading assignment, which is open, as well as realize and remember that your tests and quizzes can be information from your readings or from the Art 21 videos or from the lectures that I give. Thanks.